On my birthday, my son handed $145,000 to his MIL and insulted me, so I walked away without a word. But before I share my story, please take a minute of your precious time to support our channel. Your support and love keeps us going. I still hear my son's voice like a door slamming in an empty hallway. You're a burden, Ma. You should be grateful for whatever's left. That was 2 years ago, on the evening I turned 62. Damon Tate, my only child, born when I was 21, stood in my small living room in Brookdale, a quiet city in the Piedmont region of the country, and turned his phone so I could read the confirmation on the screen. He had just wired $145,000 to Marlene Vaughn, his mother-in-law. He held my gaze while the progress bar spun, as if the performance mattered more than the money. Then he handed me an envelope with an $8 store voucher tucked inside and said, with that practiced, clinical smile of his, "Something so you can tidy yourself up." Once, I believed the bond between mother and son had the kind of protection only God could revoke. That night, I understood I'd been clinging to a story I wrote alone. I raised Damon without his father. The man disappeared before birth certificates and first shots, leaving debts with his name on them and grief with mine. I became a public administrator and stretched every paycheck until you could see daylight through it. While my peers took cruises or added new shoes to their closets, I stacked my little dreams inside envelopes with rubber bands and spent the rest on Damon. Advanced literature programs, a semester abroad, prep courses, test fees, whatever put him a step ahead. Later, I took out my careful savings and paid his tuition and supplies when he chose medicine. He specialized in cardiothoracic surgery, and when he came home with letters after his name, he brought someone else too, Cecily, a polished woman whose family, the Vaughns, moved through society like they had a deed to it. Cecily was cordial at first, holiday smiles, tasteful candles for gifts, but there was always a little ice in her eyes. "You could refresh your wardrobe," she'd say lightly, glancing at my sensible flats. Damon keeps different company now. After the wedding, visits thinned from weekly lunches to quick holiday calls. When pneumonia put me in the hospital, he sent money for a rideshare and a text. "Can't cancel my cases." He said he hired a nurse. No one came. On my 62nd birthday, Damon and Cecily arrived unannounced. He sat gingerly on my faded love seat, like modesty might stain his suit. Cecily remained by the door, scrolling. "We're closing on a home in Maple Crest Reserve," Damon announced. 3 in-suite bedrooms, lap pool, studio gym. "It aligns with our public image." "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. I wanted Joy to find my family, even if it refused to sit beside me. Cecily finally lifted her eyes. "My mother has guided the process," she said. "She knows everyone who matters." Damon angled his phone toward me. "We just sent $145,000 to Marlene, a thank you for her introductions." The number glowed like a sunrise I wasn't invited to watch. "How thoughtful," I managed. "It's the least we could do," Cecily replied, cool as crystal. Mother arranged the architect, curated the introductions, handled the dinners. She understands social capital. Not everyone does. Damon nodded as though this was science. "Marlene sees strategy, Ma. She knows how to leverage relationships." Then he remembered me. He pulled out a small envelope. "For you, happy birthday." Something for the. He paused, smiling. "Extras. Scraps." That's what he meant. Scraps for the woman who stood between him and every closed door and taught him how to reach the handle. Inside the envelope, an $8 voucher to a discount department store. Cecily glanced at my blouse. "Perhaps a new look?" Damon's circles are quite discerning. Damon added, "You might consider a little work just to help you feel confident. Also, this apartment is too big for you. Sell it, get a studio in one of those senior communities, find your peer group." "My status?" I asked. "Folks who understand your pace," he said, already checking his watch. "We're due at a Vaughn cocktail in 30. Before leaving, he turned at the door. "If you need anything, call my secretary." My phone stays flooded with critical alerts. After they were gone, I sat with the voucher in one hand and the weight of 4 decades in the other. I cried until the room stopped spinning. When the tears finally cooled, something fierce and unfamiliar took its first breath inside me. I opened my laptop. My balance, quiet, disciplined, and mine, read $1,120,000. I had never told Damon how much I'd saved. Some of it was caution. Some of it was a lesson learned young. When people think you have money, they stop seeing you and start seeing uses. I shifted $70,000 to checking and booked a meeting with an independent advisor. If Damon and Cecily wanted an image, they could keep the mirror. I would build a life. The next weeks became a ritual of reclaiming. Mornings with articles and spreadsheets, afternoons with webinars, evenings marking up books with sticky notes until the pages grew wings. I diversified my portfolio, consolidated old accounts, and put idle cash to work. I signed up for a fitness program. I cleared my closet of clothes that felt apologetic. I wrote no on a sticky note and put it on the fridge to practice using my mouth the way my son uses a scalpel, with precision. Damon called thrice. First, to repeat his suggestions. Second, to ask me to co-sign for new surgical equipment. Third, to see if I'd house sit during a trip. That won't be possible, I said. A pause. You barely go anywhere. Things change, I answered. Bingo with the neighbors? He laughed. Meetings, I said, letting the words stand tall. With people of my status. The line went quiet enough to hear pride bruise. I didn't return his next messages. When I finally called back, it was to say I would not co-sign anything further. He sputtered about obligation. I recited the math of a loan from 2019 I was still paying off because he forgot a few installments. He said I was being dramatic. I said I was being done. By the time the leaves turned, my plan had a spine. I found a home that felt like a declaration, 3 stories in Maple Crest Reserve, the very community Damon and Cecily were courting with Marlene's help. The list price was $1.72 million. I offered $1.58 million, a clean wire, immediate close. The agent blinked twice, then nodded like she'd just met a new species of grandmother. 2 days later, the offer was accepted. I signed without broadcasting a thing. Not even to my oldest friend, Hattie Rhodes, who is the kind of woman that keeps your secrets and your spare house key. I would tell her when telling would feel like a choice, not a plea. I moved in with steady hands and an unshakable back. Quiet drapes. Thoughtful art by Black creators. A kitchen that could host 3 generations and a Sunday. On the mantel, I placed one item. A photo of me in a navy dress, 21, holding a newborn son with a head full of promise. I looked at that girl and whispered, "We're finished begging. I should tell you my name before I go any further. I'm Elora Gaines, Brookdale born and raised, a woman who learned to stretch one paycheck into 3 and still keep the lights soft and the floors shining. By the time I set the last book on the shelf in my new house at Maple Crest Reserve, the quiet inside me felt earned, not empty. The money side of my life tightened into shape. I refinanced nothing, canceled nothing I didn't need, and let compound interest do what pride never could. I moved idle cash into short-term notes, repositioned a chunk into municipal bonds, and left a disciplined sleeve in blue-chip dividend stocks. My advisor, a younger sister with sharp eyes named Tawny Bell, asked careful questions, then taught me to ask better ones. Damon noticed, though he pretended he didn't. He called once to revisit the surgical equipment loan. It's routine for physicians to leverage agreements, he said, like a teacher addressing a fidgety class. It's routine for adults to read the fine print, I replied. I'm not underwriting your routines. The second call came dressed as concern. You don't need that 2-bedroom, Ma. I found a buyer who'll take it as is, no hassle. Who's the buyer? A colleague. Solid guy. He's offering $240,000. Fair, given the building's age. I almost laughed. Even with the dull paint and the stubborn elevator that never got funded, the unit would fetch at least $520,000. Damon wasn't just lowballing, he was corralling me. And where would I go? Asked mildly. There's a residence 2 miles out, safe, staffed, activity calendar, Bible study on Wednesdays, he said, reciting features the way he rattles off lab values. It's appropriate. Appropriate for whom? For your season, he said, voice cooled to stainless steel. I let the pause stretch until it hummed. I've already sorted my living situation. With what guidance? My own. He exhaled, annoyed that the script had a new author. Where, Ma? In Maple Crest Reserve, I said, steady. Number 38. Silence. I pictured him blinking at nothing, trying to square the mother he'd kept small with the street she was now anchored to. That community is, he caught himself. Are you serious? I moved 2 weeks ago. With what money? The kind that accrues when you don't purchase respect from strangers, I said. Come by tomorrow at 4. Bring Cecily. Bring Marlene if you like. We'll have coffee. I ended the call before he could gather the pieces of his pride. The next afternoon, I stood on my balcony in a tailored navy set, silver at my ears and my hair cropped into a cut that said I stopped apologizing. At 4:06, Damon's sedan rolled to a slow halt. He stepped out first, the way men do when they think the ground is theirs. Cecily followed, smoothing a dress that cost too much to be that forgettable. Marlene emerged last, eyes already counting what didn't belong to her. Ma, Damon called. Good afternoon, Damon, I said, coming down the steps. Cecily. Ms. Vaughn. Welcome. Inside, the foyer's quiet told the truth. I had nothing to prove. The curved staircase lifted like a hymn. The artwork on the walls, pieces by black artists who painted light like testimony, met their eyes without flinching. Rosa, my housekeeper, floated in with a tray, porcelain cups, cardamom sugar, almond pastries from La Marie, the bakery that catered Damon's wedding. Please, I said, settling into an armchair. Help yourselves. Damon turned in a slow circle, as if he could locate the trick. I don't understand. It isn't complicated, I said. 40 years of work. 40 years of saving. Some investing. Some patience. This had to cost, he began. $1.58 million, I said. Paid at closing. Cecily's neck flushed. But you always lived so modestly. I chose usefulness over noise, I said. So my son could live loudly if he wished. Marlene found her voice. It's tasteful, she said, the compliment catching on the way out. High praise, I replied easily. I hear you've been advising Damon on strategic relationships. I admire a woman who manages a family brand. Damon's cup hit the saucer too hard. A hairline crack spread like a truth. Is this some revenge theater, Ma? This, I said, is a boundary with a chandelier. No one dismissed you, he muttered. You told me to sell my home and join a room of scheduled hobbies, I said. You suggested I freshen up my face to make your introductions easier. You wired $145,000 to your wife's mother while handing me an $8 voucher and calling it generosity. I let my voice soften, not for him but for me. I am not an obligation, Damon. I'm a person. Cecily lifted a hand, palm out. Elora, we meant well. You meant convenient, I said. Meaning well requires imagination. Marlene dabbed the corner of her lip with a napkin that had never been used so gently. Opportunity rewards confidence, she murmured, defensive and brittle. So does character, I said and smiled. Tell me, how's the coastal property hunt? Her eyes flickered. Damon's jaw tightened. Cecily stared at the floor. We finished coffee like we were participating in a ritual that no longer fit. At the door, Damon turned back, wounded pride masquerading as authority. You could have told me. You could have seen me, I answered. They left arguing in low, urgent voices, the kind you use when you realize the mirror has been lying to you. That night, I lit a candle, opened my ledger, and wrote one line across the top in neat block letters. Respect is a cash purchase. Paid to yourself first. 3 months passed from that birthday ambush, and the air between Damon and me had gone brittle. He kept calling, and I kept saying no, firm, calm, final. Each refusal was a tiny earthquake in his world, where my yes had been currency. The silence became a language of its own. He'd circle past my new address in Maple Crest Reserve, slowing his car, trying to reconcile the house with the woman he thought he'd ridden off. Neighbors whispered to me later, "Your son drove by again, staring like he'd seen a ghost." When he did speak, his voice carried less arrogance and more agitation. "Ma, we need those signatures. Ma, you're being childish." And finally, the one he couldn't take back, "You've always been my co-signer." "No longer," I told him. "I won't risk my retirement chasing your debts." "You barely have enough to survive," he shot back. I let the silence stretch, then said, "I have more than you ever imagined." Damon stormed into my home one gray afternoon, uninvited. His shirt wrinkled, his eyes shadowed, his posture bent like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, staring at the marble foyer, the art-lined hallway. "You have money, real money. You've been sitting on it while I broke my back to build a reputation." I kept my voice calm. "Whose degree was funded by me? Whose apartment down payment? Whose first practice office?" "That was your duty," he said, as if he were reciting gospel. "I'm your son. I was your investment." The words landed like ice water on my skin. "No, Damon," I said. "You are my child. Not my retirement plan. Not my leash." I showed him, not out of spite, but out of clarity. The ledgers, the investments, the careful growth. Nearly $2.1 million in assets, all tied to my name, not his. His face drained of color. "You could have helped us," he rasped. "With the new office. With the house. With everything." "I already did," I said. "For decades. What I didn't do was protect myself. That changes now." He sputtered. "But you're my mother." "Yes," I said. "But not your doormat. You'll regret this," Damon threatened, his voice sharp. "When you're sick and alone." I tilted my head. "Like when I had pneumonia, and you sent cab fare instead of your presence?" The silence afterward was heavier than his anger. He left without slamming the door, too aware of how much that silence said for him. That night, I sat in my study, the study he never thought I'd own, with ledgers spread like maps before me. The anger still burned, but beneath it was something stronger, resolve. For the first time in 40 years, I had shifted the scales. And he knew it. 6 months after that unforgettable birthday, the house was ready. Every room polished into quiet authority, every corner a declaration. I didn't flaunt it. I simply lived inside it. The walls no longer whispered sacrifice. They hummed with self-respect. That's when Damon called. Not to ask how I was, not to say he missed me. No, it was about the apartment. "Good news, Ma." I lined up a buyer. "For my apartment?" I asked. "Don't act surprised. You don't need 2 bedrooms. I've negotiated $240,000, fair, considering the building's age." Fair? The place was worth more than $500,000. He wasn't negotiating. He was circling me like prey. "I'm not selling, Damon." "Be reasonable," he sighed. "I already secured you a place. A retirement unit. Small, safe. Bingo nights, crochet clubs, even Bible study. You'll fit right in." I felt my jaw tighten. "I don't need fitting in. I've already moved." "Moved where?" His tone sharpened. "To Maple Crest Reserve." The silence on the line was priceless. "You're joking," he finally muttered. "No joke. Number 38. Just down from you at 24. His voice broke, jagged with disbelief. "How? With what money?" "With mine. The same money that carried you through school, through training, through every door you were too small to open on your own." He sputtered. "That's impossible. You never had that kind of wealth. Come see for yourself. 4 o'clock tomorrow. Bring Cecily. Bring Marlene, too. I'm sure she'll appreciate the view." At 4:05 the next day, I stood on my balcony, silk blouse brushing my shoulders, silver catching the light in my ears, hair trimmed and proud in its natural gray. Damon's car crept down the boulevard, his eyes darting at numbers on iron gates. When he spotted mine, his face stiffened into something between awe and dread. Cecily stepped out next, her hand squeezing his arm, whispering fast. Then Marlene followed, her gaze sweeping the facade like she was adding figures in her head. "Good afternoon," I said, descending the steps. "Welcome to my home." Inside, the foyer was a sermon. Marble beneath their feet, sunlight falling over a staircase that spiraled upward, walls hung with canvases from black artists whose signatures meant more to me than any society invitation. "Coffee?" I asked lightly. Rosa appeared with a tray, French pastries, porcelain cups, silver spoons. Cecily's smile faltered when she recognized the pâtisserie that had catered her wedding. "This is yours," Damon finally whispered, staring like he couldn't find a seam in the illusion. "Yes." "Paid in cash." His voice cracked. "Cash? Over $1 million? $1.58 million. Immediate close." Cecily flushed scarlet. "But you always lived so simply." "Because I was raising you," I answered evenly. Marlene shifted in her chair. "It's tasteful," she admitted, the words dragging. "Thank you," I said, smiling. "I've always believed true value doesn't need sequins to shine." Damon's jaw clenched. "Is this all to humiliate me?" "No, son. It's to remind you that your mother is not disposable. I built you with sacrifice. I built myself with endurance. Both are valid, but only one of us forgot who made it possible." He slammed his cup so hard the saucer chipped. "You're trying to erase me." "Erase you?" I leaned forward. "You erased me when you told me to shrink myself into a bingo hall. You erased me when you gave your wife's mother $145,000 while handing me an $8 voucher like pity charity. You erased me when you suggested I fix my face so you wouldn't be embarrassed by my wrinkles." "I'm not erasing you, Damon. I'm reintroducing myself." "Jessica's, no." Cecily's eyes widened, caught between shame and recognition. Marlene stiffened, her envy wrapped in silence. "And Damon?" He trembled, not with power, but with fear. Because for the first time in his life, I wasn't begging. I was building. The weeks following that confrontation shifted something permanent in the air. Damon didn't storm back immediately. Pride kept him at bay. But pride has a short fuse when truth keeps burning. At first, he sent flowers. Orchids, roses, even exotic blooms flown in from places that had never heard of Brookdale. Each bouquet carried a card. "We need to talk." I left them unopened in the foyer until Rosa handed them to neighbors who admired the colors. Then came chocolates, bottles of wine, and notes that read like bribes disguised as apologies. I accepted none. Finally, Damon came himself. No Cecily. No Marlene. Just him. Creased suit, dark circles under his eyes, voice stripped of arrogance. "You've changed," he said, looking around my study lined with books on finance and leadership. "No," I corrected gently. "I've stopped pretending I hadn't." He slumped into the leather chair across from me, suddenly smaller than the boy I once held through fevers. "Why didn't you tell me you had all this?" "Because you never asked about me," I replied. "You only asked from me." His hands trembled as he confessed. "I thought I was ashamed of you, but I was ashamed of myself, of where I came from. I thought wealth erased struggle. Instead, it erased me." Days later, Cecily appeared on my doorstep alone. Her poise was cracked, her voice softer. "Michael doesn't know I'm here," she admitted. "He's unraveling. He stares at old photos of you two, crying into his hands. He doesn't know how to apologize." I watched her carefully. "And what about you?" Her eyes dropped. "I treated you like less because I thought appearances made me more. I was wrong." Then she hesitated, gathering courage. "I'm 3 months pregnant. I don't want my child growing up thinking the way we treated you was normal." The words settled in my chest like a sunrise. A grandchild. A new chapter. When Damon and I finally met at a neutral cafe, he looked weathered, like the cost of arrogance had finally come due. "I can't erase what I did," he whispered. "But I don't want to lose you. Not now. Not with the baby coming." "Forgiveness isn't immediate," I said. "It's earned." He reached across the table, hesitant. Can we at least try? I placed my hand on his. For the child's sake, yes. But this time, Damon, we build on respect, not obligation. Months passed. Cecily included me in nursery plans, doctor visits, small details that mattered more than designer parties. Damon stumbled often, but he stumbled forward. Apologies, real ones, began to punctuate his sentences. Even Marlene, once untouchable, faltered. Her husband's empire crumbled, their mansion sold, their lunches with important people replaced by quiet dinners where bills loomed louder than music. In a twist of fate, she came to me, asking not for money, but advice. How to live without pretending. How to stretch instead of flaunt. The same woman who once sneered at my simplicity now sought it as salvation. When my granddaughter, Naomi, was born, Damon called me first. His voice broke as he said, "She has your eyes." Holding her, I whispered, "You will never inherit scraps. You'll inherit strength." At her first birthday, we gathered in my garden, simple, joyful, full of laughter. Damon toasted me in front of everyone. To my mother, who taught me the true value of things. The words shook, but they were real. I looked around, Cecily, humbled yet radiant. Marlene, quieter than I'd ever known her. Damon, finally growing into a man. And Naomi, wobbling toward me with outstretched hands. I realized then, I hadn't just rebuilt a life. I'd rebuilt an inheritance, one of dignity and strength. Life has a way of reminding us that real worth isn't measured in dollars, gifts, or social circles. I discovered the truth. In respect, dignity, and the courage to stand tall. Even when those closest to you forget your value. Not even your own child. Alora's journey shows us that no matter the betrayal, it's never too late to reclaim your power and write a new ending for yourself. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, share this video, and drop a comment below. Have you ever had to demand respect from someone who underestimated you? I'd love to hear your story. And remember, self-respect is the wealth no one can steal.